My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic is a show that lived long beyond its intended shelf life. The creator, Lauren Faust, originally intended it to run for only 3 seasons, but it ended up pressing on for another 7 years. Its continuity ended up spanning 9 seasons and 2 movies, as well as almost 100 comic book issues and several standalone books. A staggering amount of material for a show targeted primarily at little girls. But not only did it survive its life expectancy by a long shot, it also underwent a near total change of staff. After Faust's departure from the show in 2012, the seat of executive producer was filled in by a handful of others, and by the time of season 8, all the writers of the first 2 seasons had moved on to other projects. Without Lauren guiding the process, and without other show veterans providing input, FiM's continuity took on a life of its own. The precise point of departure is unclear, but the first major juncture was Magical Mystery Cure, where Twilight Sparkle was crowned the Princess of Friendship. With each passing season, layers of lore and world building were stacked on top of each other. The Tree of Harmony, the Castle of Friendship, the Friendship Map, the Pillars of Equestria, and the School of Friendship. Because of the lack of a central vision, the logical coherence of all these things tended to be obscure, and it was even lampooned by the show itself at one point.
The Tree of Harmony remains one of the most powerful sources of magic known to ponydom. And though it has been at the root of magic and friendship from the moment it was planted, its ways are mysterious, almost as if it has a mind of its own.
Mind? It's a tree.
A tree that grew a castle?
Was that before or after Discord made chocolate rain? After.
I'm never gonna learn pony history!
Besides the world at large, it's also the characters in it who have come a long way, as each episode is about some pony learning something about herself. And these lessons add up over time. Long past are the days where Fluttershy was too shy to utter a single word, or Twilight being unreasonably irritable.
You really should lighten up, Twilight. It's a party! Here I thought I'd have time to learn more about the elements of harmony, but silly me.
Her official role as Princess of Friendship came with an air of authority, in which she may not always have been perfect, but nevertheless took on a permanent role as conflict arbiter, and was literally sent on missions to help ponies with their friendship problems. Her personal experiences turned into lectures, and especially so when she decided to open a school for teaching friendship. With all these duties on her shoulders, her interest in magic, the natural sciences, and studying in general were often neglected. She was the Princess of Friendship, first and foremost. It is with these things in mind that we got to Season 9. G4's success had been nothing short of astounding, so when it was finally time for it to end, the staff wanted it to go out with a bang. A whole season about a paradigm shift as never seen before, an unholy alliance between the pony's most feared foes, a grand finale of seemingly impossible odds, but in which everything comes together and the good guys ultimately triumph, and even a heart-wrenching epilogue. It's certainly an ambitious plan, but don't worry, everyone will be sure to love it. Some definitely did. Equestria Daily ran a poll at the tail end of 2020, where the ending of the end tied for 4th place for the best 2-parter, just 2% below the number 1 spot and even surpassing the series pilot. Another poll asked what the best Season 9 episode was, and the ending of the end placed second, only to The Lost Problem. Over on YouTube, the reception was more mixed. Reviews spanned the whole spectrum of appeal, from pretty epic, although with a few complaints, to pretty good, to disappointing, to average, though the actual criticism was strongly negative, to the worst 2-part episode of the series. Notably, there are some big names which neglect to give their overall opinion on the ending of the end, namely I Love Kim Possible a Lot and Silver Quill. These are mostly positive in tone. Then there is Voice of Reason, who also refrains from providing critical judgment, although his co-host does resort to shouting at some point, which says something. These channels exhaust the list of notable reviews, and after having watched them, I found that there are many issues which have gone unaddressed. I mean, if you're going out of your way to analyze My Little Pony of all franchises, please do a good job of looking at everything with the right degree of scrutiny. MLP has gone on for 9 seasons, so there is plenty to look at in the larger scheme of things. At least for the grand finale, in which everything is coming together, this seems like the proper thing to do. That's why I wanted to make my own review of the finale. But I quickly realized that in order to deliver my case, I would have to talk about how it came to this point. That is to say, look at Season 9 as a whole. In 3 videos, I will dissect the main arc. First the opening 2-parter, then 4 episodes that tie into it, and then the finale 2-parter. I will do so in a line-by-line fashion, considering things like continuity, characterization and morals, in light of everything that happened in the show's past, to determine the flaws and the merits of the finale. This brings me to my final point. I do not think this is a good ending for the show. In fact, as I aim to demonstrate, the ending of the end disappoints, fails, and brings destruction in almost every way imaginable, and blows every other bad episode in the show's history out of the water. I apologize in advance if I'm going to start to take on a cynical tone along the way. I still try to look at the finale objectively, and if there is anything in which I am factually mistaken, I will gladly hear of it and stand corrected. This is also why I will not discuss the lost problem. The reception of that episode is extremely subjective, based on somewhat loose interpretations of the characters. And since the staff did not commit to the things shown on screen, but intentionally left things vague, there is in my opinion simply too little ground for critical analysis of that episode. People refer to it as the epilogue for a reason. Actually, I need to make one more thing clear. Since I try to be as meticulous as possible in my analysis, I will pay attention to the minute details. This is called nitpicking, and it is a term I will fully embrace. If there are just a few errors, they can and should be forgiven, but in the case at hand we will see that they are quite regular and of such a basic level that it's indicative of the writing quality as a whole. A good story must be consistent even when it comes to details. Regardless, these nitpicks do not form the backbone of my argument. They can be disregarded, and the main criticisms will be the same. With all of that said, let's now look at the beginning of the end, part 1 and 2. The episode starts off with an urgent request of the princesses for Twilight and her friends to come to Canterlot. As the main 6 rush into the palace, they explain,
"That's just it. Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect." Well, there is more to it. Equestria is currently enjoying its longest period of harmony in recent years.
That's a bit of an odd observation, considering all of the recent calamities that the nation has faced. True, most of these have been successfully dealt with, but it doesn't sound like a step up from the status quo before Twilight came to Ponyville. If we can take the opening narration of the pilot episode at its word,
The elder sister took on responsibility for both sun
And moon, and harmony has been maintained in Equestria for generations since.
if anything, there has been a huge uptick in discord in the last couple of years, and I'm not just talking about a certain Draconiquest joining the cast. In any case, this is Celestia's pretext to drop a gigantic bombshell.
So, after much consideration, my sister and I have decided it is time for us to retire.
Yep, the immortal goddess of the sun has enough of her job of moving the sun and has decided to send herself off to an old pony's home. And Luna too.
I, for one, am looking forward to a little R&R. Maybe a trip to Silver Shoals.
A little R&R, huh? How long has she been racing and lowering the moon again? Luna's only been reinstated as co-ruler of Equestria 5 or so years ago. I can understand Celestia being tired of her duties, though there was never a hint of that. But this is ridiculous. The circumstances seem almost suspicious, especially considering how quickly they want to get it over with.
It'll be a bit of an adjustment, but I imagine the transfer of power will be a lengthy process, which will take
Actually, we just need a few days to put together a little ceremony.
a few days!
What is going on? Why are they acting like this? If you want to take a break from all the diplomatic obligations and go on a vacation, I'm sure that can be arranged. Just let your secretaries or even Twilight and her friends hold the reins for a couple of weeks. In fact, that's exactly what happens in Between Dark and Dawn. Why their vacation in that episode couldn't wait until after the power shift is unclear, but it shows that a little R&R can be arranged even in the prelude to a big event.
But that's so soon! Shouldn't there be some sort of training program that lasts weeks, no, months, if not years?
For some reason, the Royal Sisters think they can immediately drop the full weight of their combined duties on Twilight and go partake in Boomer activities. Twilight, of course, is now on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Put yourself in her position for a second. One moment you're teaching at a school, and in the next you're crowned the supreme ruler of the realm. She's had no education in diplomacy, geopolitics, or national administration. She's a good natural leader. That much has been established. But is that enough to hand over the nation to her in a few days? She's not a politician. She's a pony with magic as her special talent. By the way, when is the last time we saw her studying magic? Or simply reading a book? These were manifest traits of hers in Season 1, and somewhere along the way, they were lost. She still loves daring do as much as Dash, and when Fluttershy needed help curing Zecora of swamp fever, she did research. But such moments became few and far between, rather than something driven by her own character. While Starlight Glimmer was practicing teleportation and transfiguration spells with Trixie, Twilight was busy solving friendship problems. But the issue runs deeper. What was the reason that Twilight became the Princess of Friendship in the first place? It was because she finished Starswirl the Bearded spell in Magical Mystery Cure. Upon doing so, she was transported to an ethereal realm where Celestia sang to her.
It's time now for a new change to come. You've grown up and your new life has begun. To go where you will go, to see what you will see, to find what you will be, for it's time for you to fulfill your destiny.
Twilight never wanted to be a princess. Celestia planned all of this in advance, as she had watched her from that very first day, as she sings moments earlier. Without allowing her to make a choice of her own, she puts Twilight's life down a course she had never foreseen or desired. The struggle with her supposed destiny is the theme of Season 4, where in the finale, Celestia and the other princesses reaffirm this notion in another song. Twilight was cast in a role of Princess of Friendship that left her lost and without a sense of purpose. Thanks to the friendship map, she got to go on friendship missions, to solve friendship problems, and even opened up a school of friendship to share with other creatures the magic of friendship. Yeah, the amount of friendship in the later seasons has left me quite fatigued. The word has slowly lost its meaning. Of her whole character arc, opening the school is the only thing that wasn't thrust upon her by any pony else. And just as she has settled into the role of teacher and headmare, Celestia sends her whole existence for a spin and crowns her ruler of Equestria, without saying as much as please. Wasn't part of the moral of A Royal Problem that Celestia and Luna have incredibly demanding jobs that they can't just entrust to some pony else, at least not at the drop of a hat?
Oh, Luna, I can't do this! I was wrong. Your job is so incredibly hard. You have to battle nightmares and work in the darkness and do it all alone! It takes such a brave, strong pony to do what you do!
And that pony is you. I walked a day in your shoes. I thought all you had to do was smile and be adored all the time, but I was wrong. There is so much more to it than that.
Don't just shrug this off, saying that writing friendship letters will even remotely prepare her for the task you are assigning to her. We have heard from the princesses themselves just how exhausting their day-to-day routines are, and now they want Twilight to not just fulfill one, but both of them. Oh, but you could say that it's not just Twilight who has to rule Equestria all on her own, right? Like Luna says.
Mm-hmm. With the help of your friends, of course.
Let's not forget that Rainbow Dash is part of an elite flying squadron. Rarity has 3 world-famous boutiques to run. Applejack is most days busy toiling on the farm, and Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy likewise have their day jobs. On top of that, every one of them is also a teacher at Twilight's School of Friendship. They simply do not have any free time left to help Twilight run the frigging country over in Canterlot. Surely they understand the impossibility of this proposal, right?
Thank you, but that doesn't mean that we're ready to do what you do.
Oh, of course you are. I realize this is a lot to take in, but...
Nope! Makes perfect sense. We're awesome! Does this mean we get all your powers? I call dibs on showing up in every pony's dreams!
Very well. As it turns out, none of Twilight's friends seem to have the slightest concern for Twilight's own wishes. She tries to make it clear over and over that she is not ready for this responsibility, but they keep interrupting her. Imagine the psychological pressure weighing down on her mind. Out of the blue, her lifelong mentor has picked her as her heir, starting basically tomorrow. She has no idea what to do and stresses the hell out, for a damn good reason. Her friends, the ponies on which she should always be able to rely, are standing beside her, and what do? They try to coax her into it further.
You can't be ready to step into their horseshoes just like that.
Well, if the princesses think it's time to retire, we're not a bad choice. We always have Equestria's best interests at heart.
That's a fair point, which should be taken into consideration when we have a roundtable discussion.
Well, I'm in. Darlings will all need a complete wardrobe update. And I would love to pick your brain about main maintenance, when you have a moment. As long as we all have each other, I'm sure we can do it.
That's a lot of promises. I wonder how much help Twilight will actually receive in the future. And I'm not even referring to the can of worms labeled immortality. As time passes, this scene starts feeling more and more like a nightmare. The way that everyone acts as if Celestia is merely asking Twilight to run a simple errand is almost unreal. Even as Twilight starts hyperventilating, they pass it off as a joke.
Classic twilighting.
Twilighting?
Ever heard of classic twilighting before? Me neither. It didn't exist until this very episode. Actually, Best Gift Ever, the Christmas special which according to staff took place right before this episode, coined the term Twily Nanas, meaning the exact same thing, and I don't know why they made up another word. Regardless, this is a completely fabricated character trait. While it's true that Twilight has had several manic episodes in the past, these were under very specific circumstances. For instance, incidents that would reflect badly on Celestia, Swarm of the Century, where Celestia would pay a visit to Ponyville and the place was ruined thanks to the main 6. A Bird in the Hoof, where Celestia's mythical pet was presumed dead, and Lesson 0, which was a minor issue, albeit one that heavily played on Twilight's clean academic record, as well as It's About Time, where she was warned by herself from the future. Compare that to the times where she didn't freak out. The time where she had to save the world from eternal night and venture into the Everfree Forest, an ordeal she was willing to take on her own. The time an Ursa Minor wreaked havoc upon Ponyville. The time she was tasked with waking up a dragon from his slumber. The time Winter Wrap-Up was about to turn into a disaster. Or the time the Chaos God made himself master over her friends and Ponyville. The time Canterlot was invaded, the Crystal Empire was almost conquered. She had to fix an ancient spell, a centaur absorbed all magic in Equestria and challenged her to a duel, and so on. Twilight's analytical mind and calm heroic disposition, though imperfect, have been established character traits of hers since day one. I'm not saying she was never anxious in the two-parters, but anxiety in the face of mortal danger is not the same as crippling neuroticism. Twilighting didn't exist because it was antithetical to her character. If it wasn't clear that this is merely a device the writers invented for this season as a flaw for Twilight to overcome, I would say that this is her friends gaslighting her.
You're all acting so calm, but this is a big deal. What do we do if something big happens and the princesses aren't there to help?
If you think about it, they literally almost never help.
For as much as the princesses have been dwarfed throughout the seasons, it can be said that at least they were still doing a fine job ruling Equestria. And this is the fundamental mistake this arc is premised upon. It takes Twilight's feats of beating bad guys and projects it onto boring official princess stuff. No matter how many villains you hit with friendship lasers, it won't make you better at levying tax, maintaining diplomatic ties, attending fancy occasions and all that stuff. If anything, these two sorts of duties would be interfering with each other, as we see with Celestia passing off all heroic quests to Twilight. This blatant categorical error is not only the moral of the season, but indeed the very reason that Equestria is about to be almost leveled to the ground in the first place.
And we still always win! Like when Sombra almost took back the Crystal Empire, or when Chrysalis pretended to be Cadence, or when Tira came back and absorbed all the magic, or the other time Chrysalis tried to take over, or with Cozy Glow in the school! Am I missing anything? Pony of Shadows.
Starlight when she was evil.
Discord when he was evil?
Poor Fluttershy. If only you knew. What makes it even worse is this very scene is likely the conception of Discord's demented plan. And yes, what Discord did was evil. Pure, ruthless, stomach-twisting evil. I will make sure to drive that point home when the time is right.
See? We've almost always done things without the princess's help. Which makes sense now because it was all just training for you to take over.
I love this shameless attempt at covering up bad writing. You see this? That's Celestia subtly preparing Twilight to open a new public library. Here we see her tacitly teaching Twilight how to appease the unicorn nobility. In this episode, she subliminally instructs Twilight how to properly address some pony by her title. And here, we see how Celestia brings order and justice to Equestria. Yes, justice. In the next scene, we see Tirek, Cozy Glow, Chrysalis, and Sombra being summoned by Grogar. Anything related to spoilers will be saved for the video on the finale. Grogar is established to be an overwhelmingly powerful monster who used to rule Equestria with an iron hoof. We also learn that his magical bell was taken away and that he was subsequently banished by a pony called Gusty the Great. This sets up some lore that we will return to in Frenemies. Grogar explains to the villains that they have failed to defeat the ponies because they work together. In order to succeed, the villains should work together too.
What are you suggesting?
I suggest nothing. I demand that you join me, and together Equestria will be ours.
I don't do ours. I only do mine. I will take back the Crystal Empire on my own, and I will destroy any pony who gets in my way.
It is weird how one moment Grogar demands unconditional allegiance, and in the next he permits one party member to go out alone. But fine, he's just planning on making an example out of Sombra in order to keep the other three more in line.
Such confidence. Go! Try to take back your kingdom. I shall send you there myself. If you prevail, you may keep it. But when you fail, you will submit to me.
This is not a reasonable agreement, because if Sombra loses, he will most likely meet the same fate as the one in the Crystal Empire anyway. There really isn't a choice here for Sombra to make, and there is nothing that Grogar gets out of it either. Actually, this deal hurts himself in two ways. First, he makes desertion sound like an expedient option, because Sombra is allowed to keep his kingdom. And second, should Sombra fail, which he certainly will, Grogar cannot revive him and use him in his legion against his will. Even someone as arrogant as Sombra would be willing to work together if it means retaking his kingdom. And if Grogar knew Sombra cannot do it by himself, then why doesn't he demand obedience like he already did just a minute ago? At the School of Friendship, everyone is still pretending that Twilight being installed as the head of state and protector of the sun and moon is as mundane as getting a promotion. She unceremoniously thrusts the task of headmare onto Starlight Glimmer, who quite understandably objects.
What? You want me to take care of the castle and run the school?
Yes?
I can't. I'm not ready. Remember what happened the last time you left me in charge? And now you want me to do it permanently? What if I don't do the right things? What if...
Starlight, get a hold of yourself. You've risen to every challenge you've ever faced. You can do anything you put your mind to. You've got this.
And so do you. See what I did there? You just said everything you need to hear.
Psych! She was just holding up a mirror. She doesn't feel anxious at all about this big responsibility. Even though Twilight is absolutely correct in saying that this in no way compares to ruling Equestria, Starlight Glimmer definitely should feel at least somewhat worried with her track record as a leader, but instead she's as calm as can be. Show some real emotion, for crying out loud! Sombra has teleported to the Crystal Empire like Rogar promised, and he has a remarkable easy time invading it. Isn't this where the Crystal Heart should come into play?
The whole purpose of the Crystal Fair is to lift the spirits of the Crystal Ponies so the light within them can power the Crystal Heart so that the Empire can be protected.
Back in the Season 3 opener, Sombra only posed a threat because the Crystal Heart was lost, and thus couldn't channel the love of the Crystal Ponies. Maybe it's thanks to Grogar's magic, but Sombra can now just walk in even though the Crystal Heart is still intact. At least the Blizzards decided not to come along this time.
The guard says Sombra's breached the castle!
You are the guard, Shining Armor. You're in command. Why are you acting as a messenger instead of commanding your troops and fighting alongside them? You were the only magic wielder among them as far as we can see, and you even specialize in defensive spells. The same is true for Cadence, really. We've seen how badass she can be and how well she can fight. So why is she sitting in the throne room without doing even as much as casting a shield?
Do you have Flurry Heart?
I thought you had her!
Come on, Cadence. Don't you see that Shining is rather busy with other things? Unless she thought he was going to use Flurry as a magical hand grenade or something. That would be pretty cool. Anyway, thanks to this tactical blunder, Sombra has managed to capture the Crystal Heart and has taken Flurry Heart as a hostage, effectively forcing Cadence and Shining Armor to capitulate. The Crystal Heart isn't immediately destroyed, and it's kept barely out of reach for our heroes. After all, Sombra has already won, so why waste the effort? Meanwhile, Twilight gathers her friends and Discord, and prepares for a counterattack.
Shouldn't somebody tell Celestia and Luna?
Ooh, good point. One of us should probably loop in the real rulers of Equestria.
No. If we're going to run Equestria, we'll need to handle things like this on our own.
For heaven's sake, Twilight, what are you doing? Not only do you suggest keeping the Royal Sisters out of the fight, you want to prevent them from even learning about Sombra's return at all. If you fail right now, Sombra can attack Canterlot and Equestria won't even be prepared. There is nothing that Twilight gains by putting her back against the wall. She insists on treating Sombra's return as a test for her to pass. It is therefore ironic that this is the exact premise of the Crystal Empire's debut episode. Twilight has already passed this test. She has shown that she is capable of overcoming terrible odds, as long as she can rely on the help of her friends. Even if Twilight's anxiety wasn't just a personal issue, it has already been resolved 6 seasons ago, and she has no reason to at least inform Celestia about the calamity. We will see more of this later, but Twilight's insistence on solving problems on her own is yet another character flaw that the writers of Season 9 have recycled for the sake of giving Twilight an arc.
Handling things on our own is all well and good, but last time we defeated Sombra with the Crystal Heart.
What if he has it already? How are we gonna stop him?
With the elements of harmony!
Time for some background. Shadowplay, the Season 7 finale, retconned the idea that the elements must be returned to the Tree of Harmony or else it would perish. Fluttershy suggested why.
Maybe because we use them for healing magic instead of banishing?
Putting aside MLP's philosophy of harmony and chaos, defeating sounds a lot more like banishing than healing.
No. You didn't need the elements the last time you defeated Sombra. And I'm not sure that using them still counts as handling things on your own.
This is ridiculous. The ponies are pretty much the elements incarnate. You can go so far as to say that they are an extension of their souls, as the elements work with no pony except with them. Not to mention that this is just a pointless handicap. It's like you're being attacked by a burglar and saying that if you use a weapon to defend yourself, it doesn't count. What is Discord's big idea anyway? Assuming he still has good intentions, he is sending the main 6 to defeat Sombra without the tools they always rely on to save the day. Perhaps he's just angling for a Deus Ex Machina. After all, the Crystal Heart is still intact, and Cadence and Shining Armor are incapacitated only by a muzzle. But wouldn't that also qualify as relying on others? All things considered, Discord's plan here seems to be giving as much bad advice as possible until Twilight realizes how dumb she is for listening to him, and then does the sensible thing.
My family is in danger. I'm not taking any chances.
So you will still call upon Celestia and Luna for help, right? And maybe the pillars? Ah, never mind.
Cavalry's here!
Please stop referencing memes, they are already outdated by the time the episode comes out. Sombra tries to use fear to immobilize Twilight, but it doesn't work because he already did the exact same thing in Season 3. The rest of this plan is just a mess. It turns out that Twilight and her friends ran straight into Sombra's spell, so Spy could sneak behind them and break Cadence and Shining Armor free. For some reason, a tiny flame of dragon breath is enough to shatter the dark crystals. Sombra basically allows Cadence to take back the crystal heart and put it back in its place. Only now does the crystal heart actually do anything, as it frees all inhabitants of Bikini Bottom from their chum bucket helmets. Without putting up any resistance, Sombra gets literally evaporated by a friendship laser, and thus the day is saved. As they celebrate their victory, Twilight makes it clear that she feels ready to succeed Celestia. No further persuasion, for instance through an even greater test of fortitude, will be necessary. The main six return the elements to the tree, and out of nowhere, Sombra comes back to life. I have no clue how he does this. The elements clearly hit their target. He didn't teleport out or anything, and I'm pretty sure Grogar didn't bring him back to life for a second time. But in a dramatic turn of events, Sombra destroys the Tree of Harmony and the elements. The magical entity whose roots hold Equestria's harmony together, as well as the legendary artifacts with which Equestria has been saved countless times, are no longer. This is absolutely disastrous in many ways. For one, any powerful villain is now much more of a threat. Furthermore, Ponyville is in immediate danger, as the Tree of Harmony was said to contain the Everfree Forest. But most of all, this is an irreversible scar on the lore of the show. The elements have been characteristic icons of G4 that underpin the metaphysical aspect of the FiM universe. They were unique, powerful, and above all, a badass set of items. And now they're gone. It is not the first time that a charming aspect of the show has been sacrificed for the sake of dramatic effect and replaced with something much less interesting, and it surely won't be the last. What makes the scene even worse is that the tree would have perished regardless of whether Sombra would have come back for round 2, if Fluttershy's explanation in Shadowplay is anything to go by. With the death of the Tree of Harmony, I think it's safe to say that what Luna called the longest period of harmony in recent years is now at an end, and perhaps it would be wise for the princesses not to retire so soon. As Twilight freaks out over Equestria's main instruments of defense having been shattered to pieces, Sombra locks the main six up in a crystal prison like he did with Shining Armor and Cadence. He could cast mind control spells on them to make sure they won't even be able to resist, but luckily he has been struck by a typical case of Bond villain stupidity. He leaves, and we are subjected to a dreadfully forced emotional scene. Everyone breaks down in tears and all hope seems lost.
Sorry, nothing about this is funny to me.
Just you wait, because Twilight realizes that they can escape this crystal prison, which is capable of nullifying Alicorn magic by, get this, digging through the ground. With the help of Pinkie Pie's drill main, the ponies are capable of digging a tunnel in a matter of seconds. Man, you know an episode is reaching when it uses visual gags from 5 seasons ago to salvage the plot. Back in Ponyville, the main six find every pony already under Sombra's control. They break down crying again, because this isn't just bad, this is super bad. And then Twilight says the magic line.
Could anything else possibly go wrong?
Well, with the Tree of Harmony gone, the Everfree Forest could grow out of control and threaten the town! Darling, that's oddly specific.
No, it isn't. Twilight already mentioned this in the last scene.
What do we do?
I don't know. The Tree of Harmony grew the elements. It kept the Everfree Forest under control. And now it's gone.
This shouldn't have come as unexpected. If the evil plans of the Everfree are so active and advancing at such a rapid pace, this should have been noticeable on their way back, because it is the place they just came from.
Even if we figure out how to defeat Sombra and bring every pony back to Ponyville, if we don't stop the forest, there won't be a Ponyville to come back to!
Who cares? This is not a priority. Sombra is about to lay siege on Canterlot, and you are occupying yourself with defending an abandoned village that is of next to no tactical value. Defeating Sombra may not save Ponyville, but it would at least save its inhabitants. They would have to move to some other town, but at least they won't become mine slaves. Of what value would Ponyville be then? And you aren't going to keep up with the Everfree with a couple of gardening tools, you know. So don't you see how silly this is?
Nope. Makes perfect sense.
But it gets even worse. Sombra breaks into Canterlot without any trouble and finds that Celestia and Luna have left the city. It turns out they decided to come to the main Six's aid, who have by now been doing heavy gardening for literal hours, as we are informed.
We've been at this for hours, but it's just growing back too fast.
Thus giving Sombra's zombies all the time to march to the city on the hill. So let me get this straight. The princesses gave the capital of the nation as a prize to Sombra and allowed him to enslave everyone there, muster an even larger army and fortify himself, so that they could use their godly powers to stop the advancement of some plants in an insignificant backwoods town. And what were they doing in the meantime? Were they just chilling in the palace until Sombra literally came knocking on the door and only then decided to assist in Ponyville? Maybe they were looking for the main Six, but Starswirl says,
Swirl, the Tree of Harmony, it's...
I know. I alerted the princesses as soon as I could. I felt it when it happened. Like part of my essence just ceased to be.
So they knew, 1, that the tree was destroyed, and 2, that some terrible evil must have returned. They had plenty of time to prepare.
Sombra's back, and he's taken control of all of our friends.
We've left Canterlot defenseless.
Oh, you cannot be this dense. Have you seen the ominous sky? Didn't you see Sombra's army, the legions of green glowing eyes? And how could you leave the capital city undefended? Actually, it wasn't undefended. There were plenty of guards stationed. They just didn't do anything. They didn't even retract the drawbridge. I would lay this all on Twilight, because she decided not to notify the princesses when she had the chance. But now we know they wouldn't have acted anyway, so I can't make anything of this scene.
Twilight, you must go. Defend Equestria, and we shall contain the forest.
Yeah, send Twilight to fix the important stuff. She could sure use the help of the Royal Sisters and their powerful magic, but they're going to have to do this on their own. Not even stopping the Everfree Forest is a sensible argument here, because that's something that Starswirl can do by himself.
Don't be. I've more than enough magic in me to keep the Everfree Forest under control.
You can do that?
The pillars and I planted the Tree of Harmony. Who do you think kept the forest under control before it did?
The main Six teleport right to the gate of Canterlot, where they are met with a massive army of brainwashed ponies ready to fight. And hey look, Sombra actually pulled up the drawbridge. Here we encounter another of Season 9's glaring problems, the power scaling. Thanks to insane plot armor, the main Six are capable of going toe-to-toe with an entire army. Rarity's magic is strong enough to immobilize 8 ponies with zombie super strength. Fluttershy can outfly royal guards, and look at this, they run straight past the main Six. Maybe it's just that Sombra's mooks are just this worthless, but it doesn't matter. Twilight realizes that, instead of fighting, she should just teleport inside.
What do we do, Twilight?
I don't know, but we can't stay here.
What are you doing?
We can't just stay here. I don't have a plan, and I don't know what I'm gonna do once we get out. But we can't just sit here and let Sombra make slaves of every pony we love.
Let me help. I'm faster.
Come on, Twi, you can't just keep saying, I don't know, and then realize there is an easy solution. This is just lazy writing, on top of being vacuous and contradictory at the same time. Inside the palace, the main Six stumble upon Discord. He's still reluctant to help, wanting them to fix the problem on their own. Eventually, he concedes.
Discord, please!
Oh, fine. Just to be clear, I was really rooting for you to do this on your own and parlay that confidence boost into being the best protectors of Equestria you can be.
At this point, Discord really does seem like the only hope. While I wouldn't expect the Lord of Chaos to be extremely helpful, it should be clear that to him, all of this is just a game. Hundreds of ponies have been enslaved, Canterlot has been breached, the very Tree of Harmony is destroyed, and it's only by the grace of this being a kids show that there haven't been any casualties. And yet, Discord is completely indifferent because he knows that if the main six should fail, he can revert everything back to normal with the snap of a finger. Nothing he does can be assumed to be done in good faith, and this totally undermines the message that he is supposedly trying to teach. The main six and Discord then run into the throne room, where they find Sombra renovating the place. Look, he's just randomly casting crystal spells everywhere. Completely in character if you ask me.
Yes, crystal.
He's not at all alarmed or even surprised that the main six managed to escape his prison and infiltrate the palace with Discord on their side. I know he's extremely arrogant, but after having been defeated twice before, I would expect a reaction of some sort.
Well, I guess it's on me to be the MVP today. I was betting on you, and I do hate being wrong. Although, if you think about it, I am your friend, so maybe you win because friendship wins? Although Fluttershy should get most of the credit for that. She's my favorite.
What kind of twisted psychology is this? This is what I meant with undermining his own message. Yes, you should be able to count on your friends in your hour of need. And in fact, delegation and having your friends help you out is one of the central lessons of Season 9 and was expressly articulated in Between Dark and Dawn and the Summer Sun setback. But for some reason, Discord wants Twilight and the rest of the main six to take on a dark wizard without any external help or even their signature elements. Why? Does he really care that much about Twilight Sparkle? That he wants her to succeed even in the most impossible odds? Or could it be that he's just jealous? Think about it. He's never liked Twilight. And when the princesses announced their retirement, he was clamoring for himself to become Equestria's next ruler. However, this role unfortunately fell to Purplesmart. It therefore stands to reason that the last thing Discord wants is Twilight pleading for his help, appealing on their friendship, and using his powers to save Equestria when he won't earn any of the credit while Twilight is dubbed Protector of Equestria, a title her friends bestow upon her as Discord jealously knits his eyebrows from the sidelines. His motive isn't one of encouragement, but rather one of spite and envy. But that's just a theory. In any case, by bragging about his special liking of Fluttershy, Sombra fires a laser at her, and instead of nullifying it with chaos magic, like he's done before, even with his eyes closed, he throws himself in the crossfire and appears fatally injured. Sombra returns to idling in his throne as the main six weep over the imminent loss of their friend, and Discord gives a sappy speech about friendship and how they don't need the elements to defeat Sombra. They get back up to face him, and it turns out that Twilight is now powerful enough to tank blasts of dark magic without any assistance of artifacts. Okay then. They do the friendship laser thing, but without the elements of harmony, because the real elements were inside them all along. This is such a blatant S-pull, but more importantly it retroactively nullifies most two-parter boss fights. If the elements were just an intrinsically useless artifact, then Nightmare Moon could have been defeated without them, as well as Queen Chrysalis, King Sombra, and Tyrek after Twilight was reunited with her friends. It would also trivialize fights with future bad guys, but that is supposing the writers can remember this. For the second time this episode, everything is instantly magically restored. Even the Everfree Forest is somehow under control, despite the fact that the Tree of Harmony is still dead. I can only imagine Starswirl is still out there holding it back on his own.
Celestia, Luna, I know what you're gonna say. I should have called on you as soon as I knew how dangerous it was. A good leader knows when to ask for help, and I didn't. And because of me, the Tree of Harmony was destroyed. Equestria deserves some pony much better than me as its leader.
It's good that the episode acknowledges that not calling in their aid was a bad idea, but Twilight, don't lie. You didn't have the slightest hesitation in your voice when you refused their help.
No. If we're going to run Equestria, we'll need to handle things like this on our own.
You can blame Discord for indoctrinating this idea into her mind, but that only means that everything he has done was misguided at best and malicious at worst. And besides, Twilight having to rely on her friends is something that she already learned over and over anyway.
Not so fast. Look, I appreciate the offer, but I'd really rather do this on my own.
No can do, Sugar Cube. We sure ain't letting any friend of ours go into that creepy place alone. We're sticking to you like caramel on a candy apple.
You see, Spike, you should never give up. There's nothing we can't overcome if we all work together.
Seems like only yesterday we were heading into these woods to find the elements of harmony.
Seems like only yesterday I was foolish enough to think I should go after them on my own. It's all on me. I'm the one Tempest wants. I'm the last princess.
You're also the only one who doesn't trust her friends!
Well, maybe I would have been better off without friends like you! Pinky, you all came back. I'm so sorry. I was wrong to...
I'm sorry, too. Friends mess up sometimes, but we never should
make up later! We'll go.
Oh, no. Not without us, you... Wait. Did you say we?
I finally learned that it's okay to count on your friends for help.
Twilight has been learning the same lesson about trusting and relying on her friends on and off for the first 4 seasons, and it was drilled into her mind by the time of School Race, the episode that chronologically precedes this 2-parter. She should by now be fully cognizant that she isn't expected to fix everything by herself, and the fact that we're now talking about the help of Celestia and Luna instead of the other main 6 does not change the essence of this message.
Today you've proven to me beyond any doubt that you will be a great leader.
Will be?
Yes, will be. Twilight's coronation is still a couple of days away. She hasn't been officially crowned ruler of Equestria just yet.
Not ready? So Twilight's not taking over? This was all for nothing?
Yes, she is. Celestia just told her that. She's still ascending the throne after the necessary preparation time, and Celestia even admitted that this test proved Twilight's capabilities beyond any doubt. As far as Discord should be concerned, he achieved his objective.
I pretended to be very hurt and gave one of the most convincing speeches of my...
Pretended?
Notice how along with Twilight, Fluttershy is the only one to cry out in disbelief here. This isn't the first time that Discord's heinous behavior has driven Fluttershy to tears, and it won't be the last. Doesn't it just fill you with shame and disgust that we are supposed to start seeing these two as a couple?
And now it's not happening?
It will, but when she's ready.
How can she not be ready? What a waste of a perfectly wonderful speech! Oh, honestly, I don't know why I even bother.
Me neither. Please stop bothering, it will save us a lot of unnecessary damage and danger in the near future.
So he could have ended the whole Sombra thing whenever he wanted. But he didn't because he cares.
Stockholm Syndrome.
That's Discord for you.
He sure has a weird way of being supportive.
Super odd dude.
You ain't seen nothing yet. This careless attitude towards Discord and his arbitrary usage of nigh omnipotent power is something they will end up regretting. Or not. The rest of the scene is the ponies patting themselves on the backs, and finally we switch back to Grogar's lair, where their leader is for some reason frustrated over Sombra's defeat, as if the entire incident wasn't for the express purpose of showing that teamwork was essential. And if his presence is really necessary, why doesn't he just revive him again? He has the right and the power to. From a pessimistic point of view, the ending of FiM can be placed anywhere between Season 3 and Season 8, but the opener of Season 9 pulled out all the stops and sent the show hurling down a path from which there is no way back. It overturned Celestia's perpetual reign, it sealed Twilight's destiny, and it did away with the elements and the Tree of Harmony. And true to its name, this is only the beginning.